Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for another International PFD quarterly call. I think, it's very exciting to see that this is still maintaining a lot of interest because there's, still some work to be done in preventing drownings, which is one reason that we have asked David Meddings from WHO to join us here today to talk about his work. And I'll give a quick bio background on David, but before we get started, I did want to share a few announcements. I wanted to, number one, reassure people that Jennifer Lincoln is back at work. When the government opened back up, she was brought back, so she is working with NIOSH again. So yay, good news. She just wasn't able to join us today because they are a bit understaffed. So but in talking to Jennifer, I did agree to let folks know that it does look like we are moving forward on a location and date for IFISH 7. And I think once we have things firmly established, MOU signed, et cetera, we'll send out a save the date to let people know where that will be and when. I can let you know that it will be in 2027, so we have some time to work things out, and I'll be reaching out to quite a few folks on this call to see how you might want to be involved in that. And maybe something to be thinking about as a group is submitting a proposal for a panel on PFDs and drowning prevention and commercial fishing. We have done that for the last two iFish conferences, and I think those were well attended and informative. So I would love to see that for iFish 7. So more to come on that. But just wanted to take some time to welcome today's speaker, David Meddings, and I'm sure many of you have know of David or have maybe listened to him on some of the presentations that were provided by WHO related to World Drowning Prevention Day on July 25th. But for those of you who have not met David, he was born in Canada, obtained his degree in medicine, and did a subsequent Canadian fellowship in community medicine there. Has received several awards for his work, including this S. Stewart Murray Award and a fellowship from the Medical Research Council of Canada. And his clinical work in humanitarian context started in Sudan in 1989, and he worked on a series of missions in conflict areas with the International Committee of the Red Cross, and then ultimately served as chief epidemiologist at the ICRC headquarters in Geneva. However, in 2002, he was recruited by the WHO, where he currently is working on prevention of unintentional injuries, apart from road traffic injuries, and is leading capacity building efforts for injury and violence prevention. So as part of those efforts, he is the executive editor of a range of WHO global assessments and technical guidance publications on drowning prevention, and is providing technical support to drowning prevention efforts supported by WHO in a range of countries. And he's also leading the effort, the WHO effort on the first UN General Assembly and WHO Assembly, World Health Assembly resolutions on drowning to coordinate actions on drowning prevention within the UN system. So, so anyway, he's going to talk to us a little bit today about his work on world drowning prevention, and we thought we might have a little time after his discussion to talk about how this group can be involved and supportive of WHO efforts, especially in regards to commercial fishers. So with that, David, I want to make sure that we can hear and see you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Julie. That was a really long introduction. And
Well, you're a
it's
busy
really,
guy.
um, Yeah, and I'm actually really happy that I'm joined on this call with a couple of people. I think I had proposed to you that you invite John Powell, who I did see had joined, but I've also seen that my colleague Caroline Lukasik is on as well, Dr. Caroline Lukasik, who works with me at the headquarters of WHO here in Geneva. So, first of all, I wanted basically to lead off by saying that I see this as a really good opportunity to have an exchange with a sector that we are probably working with uh, a little bit suboptimally, if I can put it like that. So just to give you a little bit of a historical explanation about how it is that WHO really came to work on drowning, it really began, I would say, when we became aware of the data for child mortality in a lot of low resource countries, where very honestly, I was sort of surprised and blown away when I saw that quite a few countries, the leading killer of kids between the ages of 1 and 4, or sometimes 5 to 9, was drowning. And I just simply wasn't expecting that. This is sort of about 15 years ago when I first became aware of those data. And it makes perfect sense when you think about it from a child mortality perspective. Globally, there's been an amazing global public health success with a tremendous decrease in both infant mortality, but also mortality after the first year of life. So if you look at a graph of, kids dying under the age of 5, it's basically a straight line going down, 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 down since about the early 80s. And that is due to all sorts of things. It's due to vaccination programs. It's due to sort of better clinical algorithms for treating things like pneumonia and diarrheal disease. And I think it's actually probably a success story that doesn't get celebrated enough. But if you look at those graphs, it's a really impressive story. And what that has unmasked is all of the other stuff that always used to kill kids, like drowning, has just become progressively more important. And so the fact that we were suddenly seeing, or suddenly waking up to realize, in say around 2010, that hey, this is the number one killer of kids in Bangladesh, Vietnam, Philippines, loads of countries, including, for that matter, the US. I think currently, if you look at your statistics in the US for mortality in kids 1 to 4 years of age, drowning will either be number one or number two. Um, but it was essentially a sort of a function of this unmasking. And so our journey, if I can call it like that, in relation to drowning, it pretty much began with um, we were sort of anchored in this idea that here's a big killer of kids. Uh, People should be sort of ready to work on that and ready to engage in that. And much of what we put together in our first um, one or two kind of global normative publications, they were really sort of focusing on this being a leading killer of children and young people. And it still is. I mean, I would say that's still sort of one of the mainstays of our messaging around what we're doing on drowning. But, and here's where I'm coming back to how I feel that we have engaged to date in a less than optimal manner with occupational related forms of drowning. We've not really begun on with that foot forward. We've really begun with a sort of a child injury, child mortality kind of a focus. Um, and although right from the very first publication that we ever put out that was devoted exclusively to drowning, which was called the Global Report on Drowning. Although we talked about occupational related drowning there, we had not really followed that up with trying to make connections with sectors like your sector here, that are working squarely in that area. So I'm really happy to be having a conversation with all of you, um, around this, because I think one of the things that we need to do a better job of at WHO is reaching out to the different sectors. I feel like we've got the work going with a decent amount of momentum now. And I believe that what is going to serve the field most is by um, collectively working on uh, opportunities and areas where we can see kind of a collective interest in enlarging the range of sectors that work on drowning. So I was really happy when it was through a colleague of ours who works for the Food and Agricultural Organization, Florence Poulin, who many of you may know. The Food and Agriculture Organization has done a whole bunch of things on the fishery sector, including guidelines for countries to make the small artisanal fishery sector a safer, more sustainable part of the blue economy. So we made connections with the FAO, who then connected us into the whole iFish setup, and that is how I've sort of come to get to know some of the folks in on this call, and I just think that that's a really good thing. So where else or what else do I think is important for all of you to understand about our work on drowning? I've sort of said it's largely focused or began with a focus on child injury, but it has developed and it has evolved. WHO is, in case any of you are not really too aware of what WHO does, we're the global normative authority for global public health. So everything that we put out in terms of recommendations, everything that we put out in terms of normative guidance, it's all got to be as evidence-based as it possibly can be. And so we've followed up that report that I mentioned, the Global Report on Drowning, which came out in 2014, with a range of kind of progressively more detailed technical guidance based on the best available evidence that we could find on how to implement various interventions to prevent drowning. In addition to that sort of technical work, we've been busy working with partners to do work in the political engagement and the advocacy space, trying to draw attention at the kind of global political level to the fact that there's an important public health problem that's killing over 300,000 people every year and is largely preventable. And those efforts have resulted in what Julie mentioned, two resolutions that are important. One coming from the United Nations General Assembly, who adopted the first ever resolution on drowning in 2021. And then a World Health Assembly resolution, which is WHO's governing body, that accepted a number of the requirements of WHO within that resolution, and that was in 2023. So we're sort of armed currently with two global resolutions, and that puts us on a kind of a special footing in the sense that it means we can engage with member states and political actors in a different way. We've got a mandate to do certain things. One of the mandates from the UN resolution is that WHO was asked formally to coordinate within the UN space. We've kind of built on that by establishing a global alliance for drowning prevention, which consists of 13 members. And within that 13 member grouping, we've got 5 different UN agencies and 8 either academic centers or civil society organizations, or in the case of the US, there's Bloomberg Philanthropies, which has been um, an important donor to the work, along with the Royal National Lifeboat Institution from the United Kingdom, who's been both a donor but also a technical partner on drowning. And John Powell, who's in here, probably knows more about PFDs, which I understand is sort of a central focus for this group. John probably knows more about PFDs in low resource settings and the realistic opportunities that might exist to encourage use of those in low resource settings where over 90% of global drowning mortality occurs, than pretty much anybody else on the planet. But anyway, I wanted to make the point that we've sort of got this political layer of support that we can use. It's led to an alliance. That alliance itself has led to the connections being made through the FAO, who is one of the 5 UN agencies that I mentioned in the Global Alliance, to bodies like the IFISH and sort of the continued technical work that the IFISH group is doing. And and this is the final thing I want to sort of say as the sort of the introductory remarks, because then what I'd actually really like to do is just make this a conversation. But the final thing that I want to put across is this Global Alliance for Drowning Prevention that I mentioned has just launched literally a week or two ago in Egypt at the World Conference on Drowning Prevention, which takes place every 2 years, in case you didn't know. Had about 700 people there from over 60 countries. We just launched the first ever global strategy for drowning prevention. And if you were to Google Global Alliance for Drowning Prevention, that'll take you to the Global Alliance's website. It's not a grandiose website by any means, but it explains a little bit about what the Alliance is, what it does, who's in it, and it lays out our sort of major areas of action. One of those has been to develop a global strategy for drowning prevention. And that document, I mean, I can very quickly share it with you here, if you bear with me for a second. I think it's worth anybody, I hope everybody can see that, but I think it's worth just going on that Global Alliance website and sort of looking through this thing, because we see it as an opportunity for people who work in the field writ large of drowning to sort of find a place within the broad field of drowning prevention where they can strategically contribute to the effort, knowing that there are other people who are contributing to other things. Now, I'm just going to sort of stop on this part of the thing. One of the calls within this resolution is for a reduction of 35% of global drowning by 2035. That's an ambitious target, but I think it's actually realistic if you look at the sorts of reductions that we've seen since 2001. Certainly, if we're more sort of collective about working together. You can see here that we've organized. I don't want to get into sort of a dissection of what's in this strategy, but essentially everything is sort of related to what you see in the middle. It's related to people, places, and contexts in which individuals drown. It is built on 6 pillars involving multi-sectoral collaboration, governance, leadership, research, advocacy, awareness, et cetera, et cetera. But around the outside of that sort of diagram there, you see a number of interventions, one of which is about work-related drowning. So part of our effort in sort of developing this, and it did go out through a whole public consultation phase, so it's entirely possible that a number of you have actually contributed to this. Part of it was to ensure that there was a place for everybody to to sort of anchor what they do or what they might consider doing within the broader context of a global program. As I mentioned, this has a 10-year timeline out to 2035. We're going to do our best to kind of, what's the right word to use here? To sort of manipulate countries into joining with us, if I can put it like that, in the middle of that time period. So in or around 2029, 2030, we would like there to be a member state driven process where that global strategy is reassessed, potentially revised or changed, But that process be something that's not driven by the UN agencies itself, but the UN agencies in concert with countries. And we feel that we have good relationships with countries that want to do things about drowning. There's a number of important sort of champion countries that have helped to really pave the way for the passing of these two resolutions that I mentioned. So these things are always sort of fairly complicated, but I do feel that that would be a really good win for the global drowning field if we can do that. So I'm going to stop talking there, and I realize I've not said, other than mentioning PFDs and the fact that John Powell knows a lot about them, I haven't said very much about what your, one of your sort of central areas of concern and work is. But I wanted, based on what I've been sharing with Kim before coming in here, to sort of actually give you a bit of a taste of what the global drowning prevention picture is looking like, and to reinforce that I'm very, very keen on doing everything that I can, both myself, but also my colleague Caroline Lukasik, who I mentioned. We'd love to continue to work more closely with the occupational sectors related to drowning prevention. So I'll leave it there. I'm very, very happy to open things up for a live discussion, and I would definitely encourage, if you guys have questions or thoughts about things like personal safety equipment and PFDs and the like, and how those things can or cannot be promoted in low resource settings. There's some really, really interesting work that John Powell is leading in Eastern Africa with really well, I'll leave it to him to explain what he's doing. But there are some really interesting parallels going on in low resource settings that might be of interest to you. So I'll leave it there and see if people have questions.
All right, thanks, David. I think we want to definitely open it up for questions and maybe a little time for Carolyn and John to provide their observations as well, since they're working with you on the topic of world drowning prevention. But I did want to just note that when you're thinking about the work of drowning prevention, safety in the fishery sector, other great work that's being done in low and middle income countries is the work that's been undertaken by IFS and Fish Platform. So they have been providing training and other resources to groups in low and middle income countries to help to improve safety in those under-resourced areas. So I just wanted to welcome CORE to maybe share a little bit about their work as well. So that's on your radar and you're aware of that. But certainly many people in this group are focused on that topic and doing great things. So, but CORE, I don't know if you wanted to share a few comments. Sorry to put you on the spot. I apologize, but
No,
it
no, no,
seemed
that's
important to
okay. That's
talk about
okay.
what IFS is doing.
That's okay. Well, IF stands for International Fund for Fishing Safety. It started as IFS, actually at the last iFish conference where it was announced. Lord's Resident Foundation put quite some money in the fund that is managed by the Seafarers Charity, where applicants can request support funding to go along with a project with improving health, safety, decent work and living condition in the fishing industry. The Fish Platform is an expert group with over 150 people in more than 44 countries. Actually, we hope to become the first 100% fisheries-related organization with the NGO status at IMO. So we're involved in all kind of conventions, and as a fish platform, we advise applicants how to progress with project when it's about alignment with international conventions. Very often, people want to start with training, and it would be good to look at the international convention, what is already there, to include it in your training program. You don't have to ratify the convention itself, but aligning would help. And we have very successful program now in South Africa, Ghana, Vietnam, Indonesia, and for this year, I think we have about 68,000 fishermen included in the project. And in Kenya, it's even more remarkable. You see that a few thousand people come at a training for CPR, first aid, and drowning prevention. How to don a life jacket, for instance, is a big part. So we hope to add a bit to improving health and safety for the fishing industry.
Great. Thank you, Cor.
That's fantastic, Cor. I'm just be honest with you. I had no idea about that, about your entity and the work that you're doing. But I think that's really, really amazing. I'd love to hear more. Like if you've got a link you can send me, I'll stick my email in the chat. You're please, anybody feel free to email me as a follow-up. But that's fantastic news, actually.
I will include the link to the fish platform in the chat. There is a part on IFS, and I will include my email in it as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Julie.
Yes, anytime. So John or Carolyn, I don't know if you had some follow-up comments from David's comments that you wanted to add.
Do you want to go first, Caroline?
I see on the chat she's a mid daycare pickup.
I'm so
Caroline's
sorry.
a young mother,
Yes.
so
I have a 2-year-old. I'm so sorry, everyone. It's just hitting 5:30 here in Geneva, so it's a bit of a crunch time for me. But I'm really pleased to join this call and learn more about all the excellent work being done. I think just to further on from David's overview, his great overview, is to say WHO are currently developing a policy guidance document for government personnel to help them make and implement very effective drowning prevention policies. And one section of the resource is entirely dedicated towards occupational safety. And again, a lot of the content that I know your group covers will be very, very much relevant to that chapter. So perhaps if you wouldn't mind, I could be in touch with the group in coming weeks just to get your thoughts and feedback on the policy content we have as well, because I'm sure it'll be very, very beneficial to it. Yeah, that's all from me. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Caroline.
I hope your cold gets better, Caroline.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you've given me the chance to talk about. So I think last year wasn't it? We talked about the work we're doing in Tanzania, but I'm happy to give an update if you want, because we've held a workshop since then.
That would be great.
If that's all right. I mean, it'll only take about 5 minutes, I think. But yeah, as you know, we've been working a lot in Tanzania, on Lake Victoria specifically, to reduce risk to artisanal fishers. And what we found was that the only available personal flotation devices were fake SOLAS devices. They were kind of 25,000 Tanzanian shillings, which is something like I think $6 available for $6. But we had them tested at an ISO test house, and they actually are quite dangerous. So we set about looking at can we analyze the supply chain, look at can we design something for fishers, and fast forward a couple of years, and we held a great workshop in Zanzibar actually, where we worked with fishers, some seaweed farmers, and also some local tailors, and we came up with some great stuff. It's one of those sort of examples where you throw a lot of different people with lots of different skills and abilities in the mix with the actual users themselves, and 4 days later we came out with 4 or 5 great ideas. I just wanted to give a shout out to Design Without Borders as well, because they're doing some great work, some Bloomberg funded work with regards to fisher safety in Uganda at the moment. So we'll work together to produce something. And what I'll show you is, I hope you don't mind, I'll show you a picture, because it's much better than me rambling on. at you. Let me just share the screen with you for a second. And this is only the picture of the folks there at the workshop. But through this workshop, we had an engineer from the RNLI. There's a tailor here, which I'm hovering my mouse over. This is DWB. Some fishers, some local fishers here, some seaweed farmers here. And at the end of the week, we've got this iterative design for or prototype design for an ISO standard buoyancy device. And we went for buoyancy device purely because of the cost. We know that fishers only can probably afford around, or boat owners anyway, can afford around sort of $9 to $10 for a personal flotation device. So we went for buoyancy aid, and the thing that the fishers wanted was the hook for them was a foam pouch in the middle there. So this is the kind of one of the final versions of the back here, and it had a foam pouch for the fisher's phone. And more importantly, it had a Velcro patch so they could put their favorite football team emblem on there, either Simba or Yanga. And it's strange, but these two things really made them want to purchase a PFD. It wasn't the fact that it was going to float, and actually give them some buoyancy. So I think we've got to really think outside the box in terms of what attracts the fishers. It's that hook for them. And this one we think we might be able to manufacture this one at the back, probably out of country at the moment for about $5 to $6, which is pretty astonishing for an ISO, possibly ISO standard personal flotation device. And this is a buoyancy aid only, with 2 crotch straps. And then the other thing that came out of it, which we didn't expect to, because we involved the seaweed farmers, was this great thing. Can you see this thing over on the right here? This kind of thing that Gemma's holding. She's a designer from Bournemouth University, and very quickly we found that the any of the buoyancy devices weren't suitable for the seaweed farmers, because they were moving around a lot, they were bending down a lot, and actually one of them just said, these look terrible, they're awful things and really uncomfortable. So we set about, and during those 4 days we designed this thing here, which was, we went and bought some beautiful fabric from the market, and fashion this kind of PFD, which is actually a device that designed for seaweed farmers. And I think the first one in the world designed for seaweed farmers, made out of beautiful material, with inherent buoyancy, with about 50 newtons of buoyancy, and we tested that, and I talked to tested to ISO 12402, and also locally manufactured. So a couple of great things came out of that. And the third one, which is this thing Nora's holding here from Design Without Borders, is they call it Meshy, which is a floating t-shirt. We managed to get about 50 newtons out of some material that we could probably use some new technology to actually, like they do with football jerseys and things now, where they have kind of foam pads inserted or compressed into the material. We think we could probably do something there. So long story short, we're kind of getting to the end of the journey. We're going to get these ISO tested, and what we really want to do is manufacture in country. The thing that kills the buoyancy aids being imported is the import tax. So I'm not sure what the import tax is like in some of the countries that you're representing, but it's 20% in Tanzania, for even for life jackets, and also 20% for life jacket materials, because in Tanzania you can't get the materials that are ISO standard. So there's an advocacy piece to this as well, and it goes back to David's will, really, is you've got to have lots of different people involved in the process. It's not just designers and fishers, it's actually advocates. So we're advocating for the Ministry of Fisheries to reduce that 20% of tax, so we can actually realize that and make buoyancy devices affordable. And it's a big picture. It's about regulation, it's about working with multi-stakeholders to get the right thing into the right hands. But the most important people here are these people who are in the center, which are the actual end users, and without them sort of saying this is what we want and this is the type of thing we want, it's worthless. It's really important to involve them right from the start. So sorry, I rambled on a little bit there. It was a bit of a made up on the spot moment, so apologies for that, Kimberly.
Well, John, thank you. I think a lot of the points you brought up are points I'm sure many of us have had to address on this call, which are, price point, supply, distribution. I think that, often we feel like our biggest issue is going to be tackling the cultural acceptability or the comfort issues, and in truth, a lot of it is supply. So there's some big issues to be sorted out there. So thank you for sharing your experiences. I would like to open it up for questions, comments, because we do have such a great group of people on the call, and so I'm sure a lot would have some helpful observations or stories they could share. And just take yourself off mute and throw it out there if you've got something.
Well, I'll throw something out there. David, we work for the Fishing Partnership Support Services, and our basic mission is training fishermen survival at sea, advanced medical response, and vessel stability, things like that. And we have a very robust PFD program that is supplying fishermen with PFDs to wear. And the basic strategy has been, why don't fishermen wear PFDs? They are 30% of all the deaths in the fisheries are from people just falling overboard without a PFD. So we've endeavored to really dig into the psychology of why not wear one, and train and during trainings really make an argument for why would you wear one and what's different about it now than in the past. And so one thing we've discovered is that 50 years ago, the kind of PFDs that were available were really cumbersome and not workable. And therefore, we have a fairly large aging fishing population. So how do we overcome old habits? And so just a little stat is that the U.S. Coast Guard just 12 years ago saw an 8% wear rate on deck, and now they see a 48% wear rate on deck 2 years in a row. So what we've been doing has been working very, very well, but it's a long-term project. There's no law that says that you have to wear a PFD on a fishing vessel. So this is all voluntary behavioral changes. And I don't want to take up too much time, but that's what we've been doing. And last training season, which is basically a 6-month season, we provided 177 PFDs that the fishermen chose themselves, that they decided that they liked and would wear. So we're just having a great program, and we're affecting the East Coast fisheries greatly. And just wanted to share some of that aspect of the how the psychology of PFDs can evolve, and how it was really mired in the 1950s when we started.
Thanks, Russell. That's super interesting. It's kind of like it reminds me of some other sort of behavioral choice interventions around personal safety equipment. If you look at the motorcycle helmet literature, it's pretty full of similar sorts of stories where you've got a real mix of public health strategies that have ultimately ended up trying to sort of figure out what it is about people's behavioral decision making is going to give you the best bang for the buck. It's never as simple as saying here's a bunch of free motorcycle helmets, and you can kind of fold your arms and expect that because you've whatever heavily subsidize them or put out 20,000 in a town that people are going to start wearing them. In some countries, legislation is super useful. Like Vietnam's a great example. It's a very centralized government. It's a very autocratic system, but people are very obedient to what the law is. And so when the Vietnamese government passed a law requiring motorcycle helmets, the wear rates went from basically 5% to 95% pretty much overnight. So anyway, what you're saying though about the kind of in all of the sort of much more typical settings where you can't just sort of legislate people to do what you want. you got to think through these things. And some of what you were saying about the behavioral insights being related to age don't surprise me. And some of the things that you were saying also made me think about a colleague of John's who I saw give a talk at the iFish conference a couple of years ago, actually, talking about the success they were having in terms of people's mental approach to PFD, well, to life jackets when they were exposing them to water environments that they could control. So they had people jump in relatively warm water with their swim gear on, and with and without a life jacket, and there really wasn't sort of much change. But when they actually required fishers to immerse themselves fully clothed in water that was similar to what one would expect if one fell overboard, the likelihood of those people adopting life jacket wearing was much higher, because suddenly they realize, okay, well, if I go overboard and I'm dressed the way I normally am when I'm working, and I'm falling into whatever 7 degrees Celsius water, it's going to be a very different story than when I'm wearing my swimsuit and I'm getting into 20 Celsius water. And I'm saying those terms Celsius, and I realize I'm probably talking to the only country in the world that still uses the Fahrenheit system. So, but 7 Celsius is pretty cold. I guess that'd be around 40, low 40s in the Fahrenheit system. So, but the point that I thought was quite impressive with the work that I remember seeing a colleague of John's doing at the RNLI was just how you can actually sort of change people's mindset about it when you give them a good dose of reality about what the risk would be if they do go overboard. I don't know if John, if you want to jump in on that.
Yeah, I think that's the key piece of the puzzle, is that just PFDs alone are not the answer, and I think it's a mix of interventions, as with drowning. Drowning, there's no silver bullet, we know that. So it's that what we found is the fisher safety course is the key thing, and I know that Florence has done quite a lot of work in the FAO around the fisher safety courses. We've done the same at the RNLI, but it's the fisher safety course which then gives the fishers that experience, and if you can get them in the water, as David says, which Frankie Horners was the colleague that did it, he would put kind of 40-year fishers that have been working in the industry 40 years and put them actually in the water with the wave machine on at the RNLI, and they very quickly changed their minds about life jackets and their behaviour. So the fisher safety course is the key element, and from that I think it's things like PFDs and also like weather reporting, things like that are going to reduce the risk. It's not just one single thing.
I don't know if there are any other questions or comments people want to make. I'll give a few minutes for that, but I did want to just ask one last question to David before we've got about 15 minutes. So I think one of the things that I was hoping to accomplish today was to see how this group might be aligned or supportive of World Drowning Prevention Day and World Drowning Prevention efforts. So I don't know if you have some thoughts on that, David. I know you mentioned providing some feedback on the technical guidance that's been drafted, and realizing that that's like kind of general broad overview, not just fisheries, but maybe this group could provide further feedback on that, but also wanted to get your thoughts and maybe the group's thoughts on how we might do something that's very fisheries specific next July. So I guess I'd open it up to everybody, and you, David.
So the World Drowning Prevention Day, in case people were not aware, is a day that was selected by that UN General Assembly resolution that I mentioned. So in that resolution that came out in 2021, the UN declared July the 25th every year would be World Drowning Prevention Day. And the resolution also asked WHO if they could facilitate observance of that day. So I can tell you because the resolution passed on April 28th, 2021, and that is not a lot of time to kind of organize a global kind of a strategy and a global campaign for observance of the first day, but we managed to do that for the first World Drowning Prevention Day and every day since. We've had different things that the sort of the strategy that we've approached every year so far with World Drowning Prevention Day is that we select a theme that we try and sort of frame the day around for a given year. And we try, it's kind of difficult with such a multi-sectoral problem like drowning to pick a theming that is something that everybody can latch onto. And I think some years we've done it better than others. But anyway, whatever the theme is that we select each year, we do our best to put out all sorts of advocacy materials, infographics, give people ideas on how they can lobby in their constituencies to, have various kind of decision makers move the ball down the field. And this year, we don't know this for sure, but we've had some early thinking, and we're thinking that because this global strategy that I mentioned and briefly showed is so new, and because we really hope that it can be kind of a tool that the field as a whole can use. We're liking the idea at this point in December to be thinking about perhaps theming World Drowning Prevention Day 2026 around that strategy, so that it gives an opportunity for us to sort of put that up on a platform a little bit more and get the field as a whole looking at ways that they can leverage that strategy and see it as a sort of an operational framework for collective and more unified action. So that's our initial thinking. We haven't sort of made a decision about it, but I sort of like that thinking. It makes a lot of sense to me. And if that strategy is going to sort of fulfill its promise, then by definition, it should be something that everybody can more or less get their teeth into. So that's our early thinking, Julie, and happy to hear any feedback that people might have around that because within that there would certainly be the scope for fishery sector related work, because that is one of the intervention areas in the strategy that's specifically mentioned. In fact, the strategy actually right at the very outset calls out how the fishery sector is one of the most dangerous occupations on the planet. We've got IMO guidance that's referenced in there. We've got FAO guidance, etc. I mean, the point of the document, just so everybody knows, wasn't to make it like a highly referenced academic kind of a piece of literature. We want to have it being more of a sort of an energizing document, something that people will want to sit down and read through and see how they can use it for collective action. So it's not heavily referenced. I think we have like 15 references in there, but there's a bunch that are fishery sector specific.
Okay.
So,
well, I have one idea that I'd like to throw out to the group. I think that there's just incredible work that's being done on drowning prevention in fisheries, and I would love to see us get that story out there to let people know that, there are many dedicated groups working towards addressing this problem and having great success doing it. So maybe what we could do is, in preparation for World Drowning Prevention Day, get short snippets of video from each of you. If we could get some video recordings of some of the IFS projects. John, if you had some footage, Russell, Laurel, Yisin, like there are just so many people who are out there in the community doing this work. So if we could get just like a short snippet of a video, pull it together into one kind of comprehensive video with some maybe music in the background, and then we could share it back out to the group, and you could all post it, these on your websites, on your LinkedIn pages, on, all of the things that you're working on July 25th as a kind of celebration of World Drowning Prevention Day, and how to kind of highlight the fact that the fishing industry is really stepping up and doing great work in this space. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that, but.
Caroline's just jumped in on the chat to say that we can amplify, and I want to say a couple of things about your idea, Julie. So every year, one of the things that we do is we ask people who work on drowning globally to send us videos, send us still photos, send us images. And we every year curate those into a sort of a running video that over the years has just become a little bit longer and longer. I think this year we actually had to split it out over two separate videos because we got so much good content coming in. But what we tend to do from WHO is we do a kind of a global flagship webinar that takes place a couple of days after World Drowning Prevention Day, just so that everybody can do whatever it is that they are doing, and then take videos and send them to us, and then we can kind of curate all of that stuff into it's a bit of a celebratory flagship webinar that we hold 3-4 days after World Drowning Prevention Day every year, where the field as a whole can sort of be energized by what each other is doing, but look back on how the day was marked in different settings, because it really is pretty inspirational what people do. The other thing I wanted to quickly mention is there's a couple of constants in how we have approached World Drowning Prevention Day to date. So the first thing is there is a tagline or a slogan that we use for every World Drowning Prevention Day, and it is anyone can drown, no one should. So that is, you will see that if you go on the WHO website and you look for World Drowning Prevention Day. We've got all of our social media, we've got all of the campaigns that we've done in every year since 2021, and you will see that slogan, anyone can drown, no one should, is a constant. And I think that is it's a great bit of phrasing that came out of a colleague, again, actually from the RNLI. The other thing that kind of came up one year, which I thought was just a crazy idea at the beginning, was an Irishman who works with us. He's deputy head of Water Safety Ireland. Said we should talk about people turning blue for World Drowning Prevention Day. I'm going blue for World Drowning Prevention Day, and I it was kind of a play on the fact that people, when they drown, they actually do have blue cyanosis and everything. And so his idea initially was that people could be encouraged to just put sort of blue streaks under their eyes, and it would be a way of showing support for World Drowning Prevention Day. But that idea has sort of transmogrified, I think is the right word, into something much bigger, where partners and actors working on drowning have been very active about getting large monuments and landmarks in different parts of the world that lit up in blue during the night around World Drowning Prevention Day. So that kind of idea of going blue for World Drowning Prevention Day is another constant, in addition to the slogan that I mentioned, and it has really got some legs to it. So some lifeguards, etc., they do put blue, sun reflecting stuff under their eyes, but probably a lot more people will go out of their way to contact local civic authorities and say, hey, can we get this or that lit up in blue, because July 25th is World Drowning Prevention Day. So we've had all sorts of things lit up all around the world. The Sydney Opera House, the the statue of Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro has been lit up blue. The famous Jet d'eau here in Geneva has been lit up blue. There's been a low, if you go on the WDPD website for WHO, you'll see photos of just all these places that have been lit up blue all around the world. So that's another kind of a thing where basically part of the idea there is that it can catalyze a conversation with local media often, or national media, about, well, the reason why this is lit up in blue is because there's a substantial number of people who lose their lives to drowning every year, and every July the 25th is a day to remember the people that we've lost, and also a day to sort of think a little bit about how we can do better about preventing this. So that's another constant. But if you look at the World Drowning Prevention Day website, you'll get a good flavor for how we've approached it in other years. And the last thing I'll mention, and then I'll stop talking, is there's an important kind of a thing. If you want to stay informed about what WHO is doing for World Drowning Prevention Day every year, we do have a newsletter, but it requires that people actually click onto that and say, I want to be informed. And I can promise you, we do not spam you very often, but everything around WDPD, we do sort of begin to circulate an increasing number of emails to let people know what we're up to for the given year. I'll stop there.
Great. No, that's great. And so maybe what I would like to recommend is on the next call, we will follow up with, obviously we'll have another speaker, but maybe we can dedicate some time to coordinating amongst the group on how to have a maybe collective effort to promote and support what fisheries are doing on World Drowning Prevention Day. So maybe something to pick back up at the next call. So I think with that, I'm going to let folks go, let you get a quick break before your next meeting, but just wanted to thank David and John and Caroline for sharing the important work that you're doing, and we will promise to do what we can to amplify this message, because it's something that resonates with all of us, obviously, with the work that we do. So I think I will say goodbye for now, maybe.
Thanks so much, everybody, for everything that you're doing. And just to also say, Caroline, she was a little bit engaged looking after her 2.5-year-old now, but she's just a superb colleague to work with. And I will be retiring next year because I'll be 65. So she will be looking after all that we're doing around global drowning prevention. So, and she's just a lovely person to work with. So please kind of get to know her if you can over the next year or so.
Sounds good.
So
that's really kind, David. I'll just say my hello quickly because I have my little terrorist with me now.
There she is.
So it's really lovely to meet you all virtually, and I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you.
Bye, Charlie. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the weather.